alchemist who has come to visit his friend, Dennis Barry, who has recently moved back to Ireland and bought an old castle in the sleepy village of Kildare. Barry had sent for his friend because of the overwhelming feeling of loneliness he felt living alone in the castle. He had to hire a number of new servants from the north, as the native villagers had left the area due to superstitious fears of a bog that Barry had intended to drain. The legends of the bog had to do with a guardian spirit that lived in the old ruin on a small island in the bog, and the curse that awaited those who disrespected. Despite the legends, Barry was determined to drain the bog and explore it for any hidden antiquities. After a brief conversation with Barry, the narrator grows tired after the journey and is shown to his room, located in a remote tower overlooking the entire village and the bog. The narrator falls asleep in his bed, but suddenly wakes up around 2 in the morning. He hears the sound of eerie flutes playing somewhere far away. In a half-awake state, his mind wanders through the village, seeing by his words marble streets and statues, villas and temples, carvings and inscriptions, all strangely resembling ancient Greece. The narrator remains in this state for an unknown amount of time before falling into a deep sleep again. When he wakes up the next day, the narrator shares the dream with Barry, but they both ultimately shrug it off. Although during the conversation, Barry mentions that the new villagers he hired were acting strangely lately, as if they were constantly sleepy and drowsy. Throughout the day, the narrator is troubled by the thoughts of his strange dream and decides to explore the village. He talks with the villagers about his dream, and they don't seem interested until he mentions the weird piping sounds. Some of the villagers seem to recall also hearing similar sounds at night. During the dinner, Barry tells the narrator that he will begin the drainage of the bog in 2 days, which leaves the narrator dreadful of the idea of disturbing the ancient bog and its secrets. During the next night, the narrator wakes up again to the sound of shrill piping and gazes through his window on the village. He describes what he saw as following. There, in the moonlight that flooded the spacious plain, was a spectacle which no mortal, having seen it, could ever forget. To the sound of reedy pipes that echoed over the bog, there glided silently and eerily a mixed throng of swaying figures, reeling through such a revel as the Sicilians may have danced to the meter in the old days under the harvest moon beside the Seine, the white plain, the golden moon noted amidst my fear that half of these tireless, mechanical dancers were the laborers whom I had thought asleep, whilst the other half were strange airy beings in white, half indeterminate in nature, but suggesting pale wistful naiads from the haunted fountains of the bog. I do not know how long I gazed at this sight from the lonely turret window before I dropped suddenly in a dreamless swoon, out of which the high sun of morning aroused me. The next morning, the narrator begins to search for an excuse to leave the castle. However, when he tries to talk to Barry about leaving, he is met with laughter and decides not to pursue the matter further. When the night comes, the narrator has trouble falling asleep. He is haunted by what unknown ghastly things would happen when the day to drain the bog would come. He even cogitates to flee in Barry's car, but soon falls asleep. Loud sounds of shrill piping awake him. The narrator sees a strange red light coming out of the window. Shaking in fear, he tries to escape, but is drawn back by the strange light. He looks out to the east window and sees a deluge of red light coming from the old ruin on a far-off little island. He then crosses the room to the north window and sees a procession of white-clad bog wraiths retreating toward the still waters and the island ruin in a ceremonial dance. They are accompanied by a throng of the villagers who follow them blindly. As the naiads reach the water, they disappear one by one, and the line of the villagers disappears right after them into the bog's murky waters. The flutes and the drums grow silent, and the red rays from the ruins snap out, leaving the village desolate in the moonlight. The narrator is left in a state of indescribable chaos, feeling that he has witnessed the mass suicide of a whole village, and now is alone in the castle with his friend, Dennis Barry. The narrator finally flees from the castle, but soon he hears new disturbing sounds. The piping of enormous, slimy frogs that had appeared in the stagnant waters of the bog. The sight of these frogs, bloated and green in the moonlight, was disturbing in and of itself. But what truly unhinged the narrator was what he saw in the moonlight. Looking up at the moon, he sees a beam of faint, quivering radiance that had no reflection in the bog waters. Along this path, the narrator's fevered imagination sees a thin shadow slowly writhing, a vague and contorted figure that seemed to be struggling as if drawn by unseen demons. Crazed as he home near Belly Love. Although he eventually recovered, the two fantastic incidents from that night continue to haunt him to this day, particularly when he's alone in certain marshy places or in the moonlight.